Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Coller here. The show, of course, presented as always by FanDuel. We'll get to our FanDuel question of the day in just a minute, but a lot of space here in the first hour of the show for you, your questions, comments, thoughts, and reactions from Vikings and Lions. And I gotta say that I cannot remember a time, and it's always felt like the NFL will just grab you by the shirt and whip you to the left and right all the time. Every week we come back and say, never saw that coming, never saw that coming. And that's why it's so fun, right? And every once in a while, someone will be like, you didn't predict this. And it's like, okay, sorry. I think that a lot of the things in the NFL are unpredictable, and that's what makes it great. We try our best, but a lot of things that we didn't see coming, including the Carolina Panthers beating the Green Bay Packers, the crazy comeback for the Chicago Bears, the Vikings beating the Detroit Lions. I saw on the little ESPN ticker that it was maybe the biggest Vikings upset in 15 years, which I know is a little spun. They've had a lot of good teams through then, but 9.5 apparently was where the line closed and the Vikings win the game. So unexpected stuff everywhere in the NFL, but I don't think any season has taken us so up and down as this one, starting with the game in Chicago where JJ McCarthy finishes off the game in spectacular fashion. You think, oh, well, there you go. The 2025 Minnesota Vikings. It's going to be a wild ride. And then Carson Wentz comes in and you wonder, wait, could Wentz do this thing? And I saw a few comments yesterday saying, oh, well, I guess you don't have to talk about Carson Wentz taking the job. That was always insane. Like, okay, I mean, maybe it was always insane, but didn't we just see Sam Darnold last year? Maybe it wasn't that insane. I don't know. We didn't know the extent of McCarthy's injury. We didn't know how good Carson Wentz was going to be. And it turned out that he wasn't that great and got extremely injured in the process. And then we go into last week thinking, well, the Vikings will probably battle, but the Detroit Lions, I mean, they are a real Super Bowl contender, and this is why we use the betting markets and our friend at FanDuel to give us that more objective view. What does the market think of this team? And Detroit, after their win against Tampa Bay, had elevated all the way up to the top of the Super Bowl contenders, right behind Kansas City, right there with Buffalo, Green Bay, a Super Bowl contender, and then Tucker Kraft gets hurt, and now it's hard to say that Green Bay is the best team in the NFC, and Philadelphia is out here trading for Jalen Phillips, so they're on the rise, right? And the Vikings, it appeared, if everything had gone the way that we expected it to go, if Detroit had beaten them, if the Packers had won against Carolina, it felt like the mountain was just going to be way too high. Even if you have a really good second half of the season, you're not going to get there, and you're probably going to get to 8 wins. Alas, the Vikings got the perfect results to put them right back in the middle of the race. So before I get to the coaching things that I noticed in this game and the different things I wanted to break down after reviewing the tape and going to Kevin O'Connell's press conference today, I want to give you the FanDuel question of the day, which is, suddenly the Vikings shot up after their win to plus 390 to make the postseason. That is still not favored to make the playoffs, but I want you to give me a percentage chance in your belief. So did you go from the Vikings are 5% chance to make the playoffs to, hey, I'm like all in 90%? Like, how much did you change? How much did that one win do for you? Or are you saying, hey, division game, it was a perfect matchup for the Vikings, I'm still not buying, so maybe it's only a 10% chance or a 5% chance? How much did your percentage chance for the Vikings to make the playoffs change or go up yesterday with the win over the Detroit Lions? For me, it went up from about 5%, which is what I thought going into it. I mean, when you look at those two teams on paper, you look at how they had performed heading into that game, you look at the line going into the game, and you think, I had it as 27-21 Lions going into the game, thinking it would be competitive because the NFC North games are. The Vikings coaching staff is too good to have a Thursday all the way to a Sunday after getting whooped by the Chargers to just have their team fall apart. I did not expect that a Kevin O'Connell team would collapse and no show in Detroit. I thought they would give it a fight. but that Detroit would be too talented. And instead, it was the Vikings who were too good, especially on defense, and too well coached in that game. So let's get to that. The things that I noticed on tape about the Vikings taking advantage of the Detroit Lions. The number one thing for me is the on the defensive side, and we'll get to McCarthy, we'll get to his performance, but really starting on the defensive side, the Vikings using linebacker blitzes. There are some absolutely crazy numbers that I can't remember ever really seeing before. Maybe Anthony Barr had this at one point. Eric Wilson got 6 pressures in this game. I mean, I don't know what Eric Wilson's career high in pressures is, but I guarantee it's not 6. All of last year, he played 559 snaps and had 9 pressures. The year before, he had 3. When he was a Viking in 2020, he had 11. He got more than half of that in one game. And one of the really interesting things about Wilson in this game against Detroit is that he is a middle linebacker, but they moved him around to some different spots. He actually lined up as an outside linebacker a couple of times. On the PFF data, he was a defensive lineman, which would be like outside linebacker, 17 times, and in the box 36. I can't remember any Vikings middle linebacker, maybe outside of Anthony Barr, lining up on the defensive line that often. And I'm not even sure if Anthony Barr did that. So they switched his role a bit, and where he was lined up was in different spots throughout the game, and they just struggled. Jahmyr Gibbs could not handle him. Jahmyr Gibbs, crazy stat, allowed 7 quarterback pressures in this game. And one of the things that they did to really take advantage is very interesting, where they would take the defensive lineman. Levi Drake Rodriguez was in on this a lot. Jonathan Allen was in on this a lot. They would have the defensive lineman, and they would rush one way, and the other D-line rushes the other way, trying to isolate the running back stepping up. But sometimes they would run stunts off of that with the linebackers. So imagine there was one where Pace is on one side and Cashman's on another. And actually, Wilson is an outside linebacker, and they run a stunt where Cashman goes from the right side to his left, Pace goes from the left side to the right, and they just don't know what to do with this. And it totally confuses the interior of the defensive line the offensive line of the Detroit Lions. And they did this numerous times where they were running stunts from the linebackers, which is something that's not the easiest to pull off. I mean, it takes time to run a stunt. You need to have the right things up front. You need to be sure that their offensive line is not going to figure it out, because if they do, and their running back, if they sort it out, the middle of the field is wide open, which is something that we have talked about a lot with this defense, that when it does get beat, the middle of the field ends up being open. But in this case, it wasn't open all that much because the pressure was coming so quick on Jared Goff. So the linebacker blitzes were something that they clearly were not prepared to be able to handle, and got absolutely smoked in doing so. Now, the other thing was Andrew Van Ginkel. And when we talk about out coaching, this is a super talent, Andrew Van Ginkel. When he was out, Van Ginkel's out, Turner's taking his place. I'm sure we'll get some questions about that later in the show. I can talk about that. But Van Ginkel is a second-team All-Pro player who had double-digit sacks, multiple pick sixes, and played more coverage snaps than any other outside linebacker in the NFL last year. This is a one-of-one player. You don't replace him. You don't have a 22-year-old just say, hey, go be Andrew Van Ginkel. It does not work that way. And it clearly didn't with Dallas Turner. They couldn't do a lot of the stuff that they were able to do with Van Ginkel. And if you do have the All-22, or you rewatch the game on TV, if it's on NFL Network or something, I just want you to watch him before the snap. There are so many times in this game where they've got him moving all over the place, where he is standing up and he's going in man coverage, like a man coverage look. And that's one of the things that they did with him, where if someone went in motion, he might go with them like a tight end or a running back, and he might give a look like, oh yeah, I'm going to guard this guy when he goes in motion, which is an indicator to the quarterback. And then he would just rush. And like, wait a minute. When O'Connell talked today, he mentioned the football IQ and the communication ability of Andrew Van Ginkel. So think they're on the road, so it's quiet there. He was communicating. You'll see him all the time, turning around, checking with Harrison Smith, checking with Eric Wilson, checking with Blake Cashman. And those little wrinkles of having him look like, oh, I'm definitely in coverage and then rush, or other times I'm definitely rushing and drop back in coverage, they just gave fits to the Detroit offense. And overall, he ended up in coverage 13 times in this game, which is sort of typical of Andrew Van Ginkel, but it's not something that you can do with anyone else. So the pairing of the talent, the football intelligence, the strength, the explosiveness of Van Ginkel to go along with the different things that you can do with him really showed up. And there was a great play from Van Ginkel where he's rushing and he does a spin move, but he realizes, and I don't know how this could even, I don't know how anyone could even do this. It may have been part of the rush plan, or maybe he's just insane. He spins, and then he sort of realizes that Jalen Redmond is almost at the quarterback, so he just smashes into the guard. He doesn't even try to keep going back to the quarterback. He just smashes into the guard, and Redmond gets a sack. And that's one of those, I don't know, man, instincts. If you have that type of player, you can do so much as a coach. And that stood out to me. I thought Van Ginkel gave them complete nightmares in this game. And this is one where even, he grades extremely well, as he always does by PFF. And he was their third highest graded defender. Cashman was incredible, graded super high. Javon Hargrave actually had a reminder type of game that he is still Javon Hargrave. He played excellent, especially against the run, where he totally dominated his matchup. And that was the other part of it, is whoever said week-to-week league is right, and whoever said matchup-based league is right. Because Hargrave and Allen and Redmond and Levi Drake Rodriguez, they just had a massive advantage over the interior of that Lions offensive line. And I don't think the Lions can win a Super Bowl with that interior. We saw it last year, the teams that went into the playoffs with interior troubles like the Vikings did, and they got ate up by the Eagles, by the Rams. And I think that's going to happen at some point in the playoffs if Detroit gets there. I assume that they will, but they're not flawless. Anyway, Van Ginkel, it's a great grade for him. You could give it 10 more points if you wanted to, just for the number of things that they were able to do schematically against the Lions there. So let's get over to the offensive side. And this is where the Lions have always been a pretty favorable matchup for the Vikings offensively. And even though they have a different defensive coordinator who had some great looks and who had some great blitzes that J.J. McCarthy struggled with, and there were issues there, every team has to admit that Justin Jefferson is unbelievable. And Kevin O'Connell knows that. And there were times in this game where his ability to take the coverage in a certain place with Justin Jefferson, when we talk about coaching, taking the defense in a place with Justin Jefferson to where somebody else is one-on-one, somebody else is wide open, whether it's the Jordan Addison throw early in the game that's 31 yards down the field and everybody else is covering Jefferson and there's Addison running one-on-one, wide open deep, or a play that I really noticed, and I have to shout out JT O'Sullivan, who does QB School, absolute must watch, because he pointed out something great on the tape when Aaron Jones gets his 30-something yard run, which was a swing pass that went backwards and took 30 yards off of J.J. McCarthy's yards per attempt. Maybe they'll petition the league like they did with Will Reichard hitting the cable to get the statistics right for J.J. McCarthy. But so he throws the swing pass, and you're like, where are our Lions? Where did they go? Well, here's what happened. So the safety, there was a single high safety. Now, normally, as you can envision, when I say single high safety, you just think of in the middle of the field, one guy, right? But in this case, Jefferson was manned up on the other side, press coverage, and the safety was so far over there, it wasn't quite the Kelvin Johnson or Julio Jones, two guys standing right in front of him, but it was kind of that version of a guy playing over the top in that way. He was so far over that the entire field is wide open, is absolutely wide open. because he's all the way over there and the safety is up in the box. So he takes the snap, they fake the handoff, swings it out to Aaron Jones. Normally, there would be a safety in the middle of the field. He'd be coming downhill, and maybe you dodge him, maybe you get pushed out of bounds. It's an 8-yard play, it's a 12-yard play. It would have worked out great because they had two guys in the backfield, and there's the fake handoff to Jordan Mason. They crash down on Mason, but there's supposed to be a guy there because of Jefferson, and because they put him out wide to the other side. This is known, right? Put him out to the wide to the other side, knowing that the defense would have to push that way, then go the opposite way. Just a very, very crafty and clever play call for the Vikings. And I thought that the easy button stuff overall, there could have been a little more of it from Kevin O'Connell, but there was a good amount. The screen early on third down where they got everybody up, they got the linebackers in the A gaps, takes the snap and just steps back and whips it for a screen pass. That's a really good easy button play call to beat a third down blitz. And later in the game, there was a reverse to Jordan Addison, and that gained 16 yards. And this is the type of stuff that we've kind of talked about in the past of, like, you don't have to be totally gimmicky with your offense with JJ McCarthy. There's got to be times where he just drops straight back and throws to somebody open. And he did that at times in this game, but you can also give him some help with some gimmicks. Like, gimmicks work. We saw Ben Johnson yesterday. I don't know if you saw this play. He had a offensive lineman line up as a wide receiver. They threw it backwards to Tyson Bagent, who threw it back to Caleb Williams. Like, some of this goofy stuff. Now, I'm not, advocating for KOC to go full trick plays, but some of the easy button stuff really does work. And the swing pass to Jones with the creative design and the reverse, those are nice little plays to just keep things on track. The screen pass, I thought there probably could have been a few more screens, but maybe they were concerned about something coverage-wise or whatever. We just don't see this team really do a lot of screens. But as far as a game plan goes, and the plays that JJ McCarthy had in front of them, there was a lot of opportunity there, and some was even missed by McCarthy with accuracy. But the other part was getting him rolling out. I thought was important as well, using his athleticism to your advantage. So good example is the touchdown that he throws to TJ Hawkinson. He's on the move. He's rolling out. It's a classic type of tight end play where the tight end just stops and the safety keeps going and he's standing there wide open. And on that play, you see McCarthy's arm, you see his athleticism. That ball is rocketed to TJ Hawkinson for a touchdown, but it's a really good design to get him on the move rolling and give him an opportunity to throw on the run and use his athleticism there. But if something goes wrong, he can just throw it away. And there were a few times where he did the same thing with play calls where he's got him moving and rolling and it doesn't work out, or he tries to throw the ball when he shouldn't have. There was a few plays like that where maybe he should just run for 3-4 more yards or, just throw it out of bounds. But getting McCarthy on the move, they used play action 12 out of 32 times. Thought they probably could have used it even more considering that they were ahead in the game for most of the time, but it was largely successful for them. So I thought that was another thing that was well coached, and also considering they've got some really good defensive linemen. So that's a good thing to try to get him on the move. Using big personnel is on my list as well as a thing that the Vikings like to do with Josh Oliver, but it wasn't clear. Are you going to really do it here without Oliver in the lineup? And a shout out to Nick Vannett, who is a guy they picked up in training camp. Sometimes these guys just come in and it's a camp body. You got somebody hurt or whatever. And all right, okay, this guy has been around 14 teams or something. Oh, that's fine. Just, write a little note in the notebook and move on. But Nick Vannett, all of a sudden, here's a guy who's played for Seattle. He's played for Pittsburgh. He's former third-round pick out of Ohio State that's bounced around. He's playing 17 plays in this game because they trusted him to use the bigger personnel, and they did a good job out of those looks. And the league, it's always ebbs and flows, right? And there was thought maybe a little while back when it was Brady and Manning standing in the shotgun with 5 wide receivers, picking apart offenses that, oh yeah, this is the future. The future is the Bryce Petty Baylor Bears of everybody's just spread out, running routes all over the place. But you watch Seattle do this. They're using 21 personnel. They're using 12 personnel. And I think the fact that the Vikings, if they get Ham back and they get Josh Oliver back, the trend in the league this year has been more tight ends and getting some fullbacks back. And that's why it's cyclical. And I got the sense a little bit last year that the league was starting to inch back. And I had a conversation with Josh Metellus about this, inch back toward teams using bigger personnel again and working on everything off the run. And what Metellus told me last week was that because defenses are so aggressive, because they're blitzing so often and throwing so many different looks, that teams' answer to that is to have extra tight ends so they can shift either way with the offensive line. He said that makes it a little bit harder. So the Vikings, of course, decided to just rush everything up the middle and make the linebacker figure it out. But having Vannett in there was that. It was, hey, this is what's kind of working against aggressive teams. And the Lions have been aggressive. They've run a lot of blitzes, and the Vikings did not do great against their blitzes. But the point is that they went that way. They were able to run the football more effectively. They could have done it a little bit more, I agree. But they were able to run effectively with the bigger personnel. So I thought that was another way that they outcoached the Detroit Lions. So those were kind of the main notes of like schematics that I noticed from the game. Did want to throw a couple other player names out there. Donovan Jackson. This was a great game for Donovan Jackson. I think this is his first great game. He played really well against Cincinnati too, and he did that hurt. Cincinnati is an atrocity though. Cincinnati is illegal in most states. So, the fact that the Vikings offense did well against them, we saw it every game they've played since. But in this game, he's playing Aleem McNeil, he's playing DJ Reader, and he's just outstanding. And one of the things that I've noticed from Donovan Jackson is that when teams run games on him, when they run stunts, he can figure it out. He can sort through what they're doing up front and uses athleticism to recover, to make kind of close plays where it looks like a guy might be able to get an edge on him and just get an arm out there. His feet are very light and very quick. That athleticism is there. And then I also think we saw this yesterday. He's just got some dog in him. He is a soft-spoken, very friendly person, probably one of the most friendly people that I've ever covered. Not on the field, though. He was a beast in this game. He graded extremely well. He allowed one quarterback pressure, 78.1 PFF grade from Jackson, which is not something we see from Vikings guards historically. And he was their highest graded run blocker. It was a terrific game from him. And I thought Blake Brandel played well too. They didn't attack Brandel as much as I would have thought, but he played well too. But I thought Jackson stood way, way out in this game. And I'll throw one more shout out from the tape, and then I'll get to your questions and comments. Fabian Moreau, everybody. Fabian Moreau. He ended up playing 23 snaps in this game. Or was it 24? Let me check. Let me be 100% accurate here. Was it 23 or 24? Hold on. I got it. 24. Played 24 snaps in this game. He was targeted, I believe, twice. Once. He was targeted once, and it was an incompletion. For that guy to come in, he's been on the practice squad the last 2 years. He played a little bit last year in case of emergency and then comes out and plays again. Just well done, Fabian Moreau. They needed him in a lot of clear pass situations, and he came in and did the job after not playing at all season, joining the team very, very late. So here's Vannett, here's Moreau coming in, making plays for this team when those guys weren't even in training camp. So that was big for them, and it was necessary. And I did want to throw out there that there was a report, I think it was Albert Breer, who reported the Vikings will be looking at cornerbacks, which I'm not ready to scream at the top of the hills, trade for somebody, but I will say, as short as they are at corner and the opportunities that might be out there for a multi-year player, I know what you guys are going to say, hey, don't trade any more draft capital. But if you are talking about someone who's on the young-ish side, that if whatever the situation might be, then look, this team remains built to win now, and that didn't change. So if there is an opportunity there to get someone, I mean, you look at Philadelphia getting a really good player for a third round draft pick. You can get the picks back. That's another thing that you have to keep in mind. If you trade a third for someone and get someone good in the last year of their rookie contract, they might stay with you if they really like it, but they also might leave and then you get a comp pick back and it ends up evening out. Now, I know that kicks it down the road for a year, but you understand the point that like you can play that game a little bit. I don't think that yesterday changed so much that I would say, wow, go out and spend a first, spend a second, do whatever it takes. I'm not there, but if the opportunity should arise for a corner, that's where they're short. Isaiah Rodgers, after the Cincinnati game, has struggled. Their tackling has been problematic in the secondary. And as great as Fabian Moreau was yesterday, I don't know if you want him week after week after week. I think Jeff Okuda, and hopefully he gets better health-wise, but maybe out for some time with a second concussion. So I think that there might be an opportunity there for the Vikings to do that and sort of hedge, play halfway. Like you're not going all in with something crazy, but you're getting someone who could potentially help you improve your team. So that's where things stand after the big old film breakdown, and it will all come out with all the clips and everything else on the newsletter, purpleinsider.football. If you like the show, want to support it in some way, go sign up there. I write every day, so there's lots of additional content, including my article from Ford Field last night. So let's get into your questions, your thoughts. Oh, Asante Samuel Jr. Yes. Now this is absolutely Asante Samuel Jr. Finally, we're at the time where we can have that discussion. I know in the offseason, he was, by whatever report or made up something, was a Minnesota Viking in like March, but clearly he had a very serious injury that he was recovering from. But if you're asking if I'm interested, yes, the answer is absolutely yes, that he would be somebody that could be now and later. And that's always the point for me when you're making these trades. When they trade for Hawkinson, who scored a touchdown, amazing how everyone looks better when the quarterback is the starter and not the backup. So he catches a touchdown yesterday. A great example, though, of a guy, you could talk about contract or whatever, but when they traded for him, they knew they wanted to have him longer term. And then they signed him to the extension. Like that's the type of trade that you'd want to make, or one that doesn't cost really a whole heck of a lot just in general. Michael says Vikings should bring in another running back that can be explosive. Hard to say how many. I mean, look, if Breece Hall is out there, sure, but I don't think that they could get him for a reasonable price. There will probably be a bidding war for somebody like Breece Hall. I thought that Aaron Jones looked great. Now, there's some concern about the shoulder. He gets banged up for the second time this year. That is worrisome. He looked awesome, though. He looked like he had his burst back, catching the football extremely well. And Jordan Mason, I think under the right circumstances, has been very good this year when there's opportunity, when they can run outside zone stuff. He was really good against Cincinnati. I know it's not a very good team. And he's shown some of those flashes of even when you hand him the ball, if it looks like a 2-yard run, it turns into a 4-yard run for Jordan Mason, the violence that he has. But I think we have seen a little bit of the shortcomings as it's gone along, especially in pass protection. There were a few times yesterday where you went, oh, that's not, no, for a guy that big, technically it has to be better in the pass protection part of it. I think he is explosive, though, and I thought that they ran overall well in this game and could have done it more. And you would like to see at the goal line when you have Jordan Mason on your team. And now that Jackson is back, you've got Fries, you got Darisaw. Does it matter? Yes, it does. Christian Darisaw, big deal there to have him back. Christian Darisaw, I think, gave up maybe one pressure, or it might have even, I think it was one. Let me look. I think it was one. Let me see. Yep. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's a pretty big deal to have Christian Darisaw back. So, I thought that they can run behind this offensive line. I don't know if they need to go trade for someone, but when you're talking about explosive running backs, I don't know who is making them available right now, if there's opportunity to get somebody else. I think that their backfield is pretty solid if Jones and Mason are back there. It's not like Madden where you could just go trade for a bunch of stars and you're going to be in good shape. I get where you're coming from, but I think as long as Jones is healthy, it's still pretty good, the backfield overall. JMJ got you got a Greyhound? Oh, that's nice. Where did I get my Greyhound? I got him from there's a place here, there's a group here that gets they adopt them from all over the world. He's upstairs though now with my wife. He's not down here for right now. And that's why you haven't heard him playing with toys, knocking my microphone out or any of those things. Nicholas, what was the feel like in the press box after the game? What generally happens in the press box. Well, after the game, it's all just quiet. It's just dead quiet. There's no one speaking in a press box after the game because everyone's working and everyone's writing. So you're hearing like some maybe whisper conversations or quick conversations, but everybody's usually working. As far as the game winded down, I think that we're all looking around going like, are they going to blow this? And when you're talking about questioning certain decisions from Kevin O'Connell when it came to game management down at the goal line, although I will say JJ McCarthy needs to just slide and stay in bounds and not run out of bounds. That was a little bit on him, that when you have that rollout and it's a one player type of option where if Hawkinson sneaks out, he's wide open touchdown. If he's not, you just need to like slide down for a 2-yard loss and kick the field goal. I promise Will Reichard is not going to miss it from 22 yards as opposed to 19. He'll be fine. So that was a little bit, McCarthy needs to do that when he realizes that play isn't there. It's in part to the throw to Jefferson that gets knocked down. That's probably a position where you have to run the football and wind the time down. I know that was a common complaint, but in the press box, we're having those same discussions. I think it more or less, we're just trying to help each other all kind of understand. Like that's a lot of the discussion in the press box is kind of, hey, did you see that someone's in the blue tent? Or, hey, do you think that they should have done this on this play? Or did you notice that? Or did I see that correctly? Or who made that play? Who caught that? That's what's usually happening, is just trying to help each other understand and get it as accurate as we possibly can. But also as the game is going along, we're also keeping an eye on, hey, the Packers are losing to the Panthers. Did you see this? And this is wild. And this is kind of crazy. So it's a little bit chaotic in that way, but it's very different from like what it would be in the stands, where it's more of we're all trying to make sure that we understand what happened and what questions we need to ask post game, and what were certain decisions questionable, or were they the right decision, or why did something happen? That's kind of usually how it goes every week, regardless. But I think that, as the game went along, nobody knew how it was going to play out. I mean, in the second quarter, it looked like they were going to throw it away. McCarthy throws the interception on the Naylor play, was that second or third quarter or whatever that was, throws the interception, and he also throws another interception that gets called back. And you're wondering, is this thing going to kind of come off the rails? And they were able to get it back on with a few really good plays from him. That scrambling touchdown to me was one of those, yes, first round pick. Like, because that was serious speed, serious athleticism, serious acceleration. And there was another throw that I felt the same way, where it was like, yep. And that's where you are different from your run of the mill backup quarterback or whatever guy that you draft in the third round. And it was a outbreaking route to Jordan Addison, where I think it was a little bit of a play action and he lets it rip. And that ball is traveling. I mean, that's his, when he can put everything into it, when it's actually right to put everything into it, that ball is motoring to Jordan Addison and it gets there in a blink. The defender has no chance whatsoever to close on it. And so he had those type of moments during the game. So it was, but it was rocky. I mean, it's up and down. It's, there's penalties taken away, kick returns for touchdowns, and there's big plays and there's sacks everywhere. And we're, trying to figure out like, how is it that Flores' defense is doing this? So those are the kind of discussions that are usually going on. Sean says the season is back on. Do we trade for Jackson Powers Johnson for center depth or go for a corner? now that we have life. So one thing that O'Connell did say is that Ryan Kelly was going to start working out on the side. Now, I've said before that I am concerned for Ryan Kelly, just the deepest amount of respect for him and his career. And I hope he makes the right decision here. I hope that he exhausts every single option when it comes to medical second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh opinions, that he wears the cap, the extra helmet, whatever it takes. I don't want to see anything more happen to Ryan Kelly, but we know how football players are, who that's their identity and that's what they do. So I wouldn't be surprised if we do see Ryan Kelly come back at some point. And when it comes to Jackson Powers Johnson, like, I'm kind of intrigued because you do need a longer term option. I would love to know what happened there. I mean, it seems like they told him he wasn't going to play center. Is that what happened? It's hard to pay attention to the Raiders, but he was pretty good for them. So that's a bit of a surprise. Corner would be a little more in the range for me. I thought Brandel had a good game overall, but corner would be where I would go, because if Rodgers or Murphy gets hurt, you've just got nothing. I mean, clearly they were interested in playing Moreau instead of Dwight McGlothern, so they don't want to play Dwight McGlothern. They loved Zamiah Vaughn all offseason, but we haven't seen him, and he's on the practice squad, and it doesn't look like he's getting elevated. You need a guy if Jeff Okudah is going to be out long term. Christopher says, how concerned are you about Turner with how he only got 14 snaps with Van Ginkel back? Feels really telling of what the team thinks of his lack of snaps. So this, I will admit, I got a little bit frustrated yesterday during the postgame when so many comments were talking about Dallas Turner after that win. I thought, of all the things to talk about, it wouldn't be in my top 25. Here's the reality of Andrew Van Ginkel. He's incredible. He's not just a guy you rotate. He's not just pretty decent. He's not solid. Oh, okay. Mix him in and out, give him a break here or there. He's insane. He's one of the best players in the league. And it's just like last year where he was ahead of Dallas Turner and they rotated Turner in depending on the situation. And that was how it was going to work. And if Van Ginkel's out there playing like he did yesterday and Grenard is not coming off the field, then they're probably going to do it again. And you can have that conversation about, well, was it worth a first round pick if you're going to do that with him? And you could go as far down the road as you want. To me, I'm just extremely tired of that conversation. I don't think that Turner showed that he was ready to be that guy yet in his career, and maybe someday he'll get there. We've seen a lot of edge rushers, especially undersized guys, take a while before they get there. I think that there were some things that were concerning. The fact that they wanted to use Eric Wilson as an outside linebacker instead of Dallas Turner is probably telling. But I also think that, gosh, it just gets so tiring to spend all the time every week debating and talking about a draft pick that's not the quarterback. It's not JJ McCarthy. That's a little bit different. One player on the defense over and over and over again. I understand why it's relevant and why there's a question there. I did think in his 14 snaps that he did well. He had a couple of plays where he was in coverage or had to make a tackle, and he made nice plays. He had a couple plays where I think it was they threw in his general direction twice, and he made 2 tackles on those plays. And he was only he only rushed 5 times and then dropped back 5 times. I don't know overall still after this sample, like what Dallas Turner is going to be. I don't think he's turned 23 yet, but here's what I think. If Van Ginkel is healthy, if the D-line is healthy, if the linebackers are healthy, and Turner is a rotational player, then it's going to look a lot like last year where he's a weapon for you. And if that's what he is, then that's what he is. And that's good for your team overall. Is it good in terms of how much was invested in him and all that? Of course it's not. But as far as the 2025 Minnesota Vikings go, Dallas Turner can be a weapon that's rotating in for you. And he's probably much more effective that way than he is at this point in his career being asked to take 60 snaps. But to me, it's just not that intriguing when you have Andrew Van Ginkel. And, when they drafted Dallas Turner, I don't know that they knew Andrew Van Ginkel was going to be this freaking good. They knew he was good. I don't know if they knew none of us knew he was going to be this good, that he was going to take another step in his career and be an early 30s superstar in the NFL. So, sometimes things work out a little differently than you expect them to. JP says, on special teams penalty, I do think the hold on the negated touchdown probably allowed that play to happen. So I'll be curious if Miles Price can look as dynamic when they stop the penalties. Well, the 61-yarder he had was pretty good. I think that some of the penalties this year have been absolutely legit and they've helped him. But the eye test from Miles Price from day one was that this guy is a baller. He breaks tackles like a running back. I'd like to see him eventually get some offensive reps. I'd like to see a receiver running through corners. I mean, if they can run a jet sweep with him, if they can run a bubble screen with him, I mean, there's a little bit of like the same body type. I'm not saying he's this player as Deebo Samuel, where he just looks like a running back. And the way that he breaks tackles, the way that he accelerates, I think that there's a natural skill to this that makes no sense. I just punt returning and kick returning. This is all through history. There's a bunch of guys who you're like, Marcus Sherrills, what? Like a walk-on, was he a walk-on? I can't remember. Maybe he wasn't a walk-on, but like a total underdog. Maybe he was. I'll have to Wikipedia it. I can't remember, but a total underdog guy, undrafted to the Vikings, and he just turns out to be awesome at the returning. It's happened many times through history. I don't know why. And I think that Miles Price is 100% one of those guys that just has like a really special ability to be able to spot holes and break tackles. So I don't think that yesterday, the touchdown, I think the touchdown, yes, it was helped by a hold. There was no question about it. But I don't think that we should be questioning at this point anymore whether he is good at returning. He is. Is he going to be great? I don't know, but I think that he is good. Nick, did you get a chance to watch QB School? I did. Good breakdown. A lot of things JJ did well. A few too many lucky moments too. Yes. And too many inaccurate throws for sure. There's yards left out there. There is one play where Justin Jefferson is one-on-one with Amik Robertson, and Robertson's playing off coverage. And for whatever reason, the Lions, maybe it was because they were blitzing. I don't remember the reason, but he's open over the middle of the field. He's running just a slant. And all JJ McCarthy has to do is just pitch and catch. And he's going to catch that and he's going to run 10 more yards. And instead, he throws it 7,000 miles an hour and it's not that accurate. And Jefferson has to dive for it and he goes down and he tries to get up and maybe he gets like 2 more yards. There were yards left out there. The interception is a terrible throw. It just is. And overall, I thought that JJ McCarthy had tons of wow moments, a lot of good decisions. I played winning football in the game and deserved 30 more yards on the swing pass, and the stat line would look better. But overall, like, he deserved to be graded pretty well in that game. But there were just, if you're going to nitpick that, like PFF gave him a 63.5. Like, I think that's fair because you would have some negative, inaccurate throws, some bad decisions. The interception, yeah, JT really didn't like that interception that got negated because his point was, yeah, it's great that that got negated, so it didn't count. But he didn't know it was getting negated when he threw it. He just made a horrible decision that got picked off. And he didn't see a safety rotating over, which you probably don't see much in college football, but you certainly do in the NFL, where one safety came down, the other safety rotated back, and then he just throws a balloon ball into the sky. So yeah, there were inaccuracies and there were some decisions where you went, JJ, no, that's not it, man. There are times where he's trying to do a little too much. And that's where I think Kevin O'Connell is really trying to hammer home. What O'Connell said today in his press conference was that he really liked this one play that actually on tape doesn't look good. There's a play where he throws a check down early to Aaron Jones. And if you look at the play, Jefferson's breaking wide open 20 yards downfield or 15 yards. It's just a great design. He hits his break. He's wide open. And JJ checked it down. And what O'Connell said was that he was saying, hey, that's fine. It's all right. Like, it's okay if you get a safe completion that moves the sticks. And I think they got maybe 9 or 10 yards out of it. It's good if you get a safe completion. Don't throw the ball deep if you're not 100%. Don't try to make too much out of it. And I think that there were times there's, a throw on the run where he's rolling to his left and he takes a huge hit. You're like, JJ, no, man, like you can't take that hit. If you're going to roll out there, which he kind of missed the play, someone was wide open, but that happens. So, okay, you're rolling to your left, but don't whip it down the field and risk an interception and risk yourself getting destroyed when you could just, hey, flip it out of bounds. So I think that there's a lot of learning still to be done for JJ McCarthy, and that breakdown is terrific. It breaks down everything that he did great and everything that he needs to work on as he goes forward into this next week against Baltimore. Andrew says to the FanDuel question of the day, which was the Vikings are now plus 390 to make the postseason. So not favored, but it's a lot better than it was a few days ago. Give me a percentage change in your belief in them. That is the FanDuel question of the day. And he says, went from 0 to more than 0. Ahmed went from 5 to 50%. JP from 10 to 35%. I think 35 is probably where I would be. David says, I kept suggesting secondary help and you have poo-pooed it since the offseason. I mean, David, I know I see in the comments, man, I don't think I don't think there was poo-pooing, my friend. I felt that way. I like the way Isaiah Rodgers looked, but I mean, Rob can attest. Rob, who was really big on the signing of Jeff Okudah, how many times he and I went back and forth on that. And I reported all summer long that Mekhi Blackmon was struggling. And when they got to the end of the offseason and they only picked up Fabian Moreau, I remember myself saying, I think there's another move that has to be made for the secondary. So I don't know. I do think that I thought Theo Jackson would be better than he's been. This is his first year starting. I think they still like him and believe in him, but that's concerning. He's also in concussion protocol. So how they're going to handle that, we might see a little more Jay Ward this week if he's not playing, and probably best to play it safe with some of the concussions. So we might see Jay Ward, who I thought played well early and maybe could be deserving of more reps. But no, I mean, I think that if you were asking, like, what are the biggest concerns outside of the quarterback all season? I mean, all off season, I think corner was probably the thing that was at the top of the list. But anyway, so David says they should make at least 2 moves in the back end to provide depth. Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know about 2, but at least another corner seems like it has to happen when they're dealing with the injury to Okudah and some of the struggles that they had. But no, I mean, I agree with you. I was really impressed with Isaiah Rodgers in training camp, and you can kind of see where some of the weaknesses are. I think you've also seen where the strengths are and why he would be a player that would look amazing in training camp. The speed, the explosiveness, all that was very impressive. But, I think that's been a concern really since day one. Let's see. Skull Bro from 5 to 40%. A reasonable jump, Skull Bro. I think that's a reasonable jump. Zoomer KO says having all the captains talk to the team was a great move by Kevin O'Connell. I don't think anyone has ever or would ever question Kevin O'Connell's ability to read the room when it came to players, right? And to understand what they need at a given moment. I think that's his strength. I mean, the culture thing has been extremely real and matters. And I'll go back to, I probably said it before, but I don't remember when I said it, that my friend Sage Rosenfels talked about playing for Gary Kubiak and how those teams were not always worthy of 8 wins, but even when it was a bad year, they would get there because the players would buy into Gary and they would fight for him and they didn't want him to have a losing record. And, I thought what we saw yesterday on a few different levels from coaching was we saw a lot of the stuff that they've been talking about with McCarthy, and we've seen a lot of the stuff that a good play design and good receivers can do for you, which is the whole idea of the 2025 Vikings was this supporting cast, this line, this receiving core, these play calls. They will elevate the quarterback. And I think that happened yesterday. And then when Brian Flores can cook, and he's got Van Ginkel out there, and Harrison Smith looked really good yesterday. I thought it was by far the best Harrison Smith has looked easily so far this season. He's everywhere. And then, yes, that's it. That's what he can do when he's got everybody. Now, they've got more to prove going forward here, and they still did allow some big plays and 24 points. And, if Jalen Naylor doesn't catch that ball at the end, you're probably talking about the Lions finding a way. So it's not perfect, but I think when you have a coaching staff that is this good, that you're usually not going to completely fall out of it. And I think that's why we were all so shocked at the results against the Chargers and just how it went, because usually this coaching staff has not had games like that. And so that was where the alarm bells were going off. Let's see. Sean says 100% confident in the Vikings winning the North and getting into the playoffs until they lose a division game. Okay, well, you got the caveat there. Sure. I mean, if they win every division game, they will win the division. The matchup in Green Bay, gosh, how things changed yesterday. And I don't like to talk about it this way, as in, hey, what a good break for the Vikings that Jaden Daniels snapped his arm. Like, that's sick and horrible. But also, it's a fact that Tucker Kraft and Jaden Daniels going down, those are two of the best players in the NFL. And they're lost for opponents of the Vikings that are coming up. It's a big deal that they're going to go in a couple of weeks down to Green Bay, and they've got a game against Chicago first. Chicago, obviously no joke, but they're going to go to Green Bay and not have to face Tucker Kraft, and they're going to play Washington and not have to face Jaden Daniels. And it's just a different situation now in the entire league. And that's like how everything changes from a week to week, but injuries is part of that. So no, I mean, I wouldn't go 100%, but they can get us a lot closer there with, I mean, let's see, next 4 games, you've got Baltimore, Chicago, Lambeau, and then I forget what's after that. But if you can win, if you could stay at 500, if you can win 3 out of 4, that would be incredible. But if you can even stay at 500, you've got a chance to hang in the race and be in the playoffs. Let's see. KC Shelf or K Shelf. We'll just call you KC. Kiefer McCarthy is and was Darrisaw O'Neal. I mean, yeah, like having one of the best tackles in the league is pretty important. I will say that there was, I think the biggest thing for McCarthy was, yeah, he did get away with some stuff, but I think it was just not giving the ball away. The one interception is not great, but overall that was his, by PFF's charting, his one turnover worthy play. And I don't think they counted the play that the flag was thrown on the deep balls. So I thought that the biggest difference against Atlanta, he had some nice scrambles. He had some nice throws against Atlanta. But the biggest 2 differences were the quick sacks and then not the catastrophic mistakes. He did take some sacks, but not catastrophic strip sack, fumbling snaps, stuff like that. There was the one that looked like it was maybe a miscommunication with him and Brandel, but aside from that, still the sacks were an issue. And I think that's where it does show you that quarterback is responsible for sacks sometimes, because the offensive line overall did a pretty good job. And I'm curious. So how about this? This is proof of this. The PFF charting credited the offensive line with only 1 of the 5 sacks that JJ McCarthy took in yesterday's game, which sounds right. Like holding onto the ball, scrambling out of bounds is technically a sack. I personally don't love that, but I agree with you though that, Darrisaw and O'Neal, I mean, if you're playing without them, the drop off is so enormous that it's really, really hard, really hard for anybody to play quarterback. That's inexperienced, especially. Jay is giving JJ a B. Or maybe you meant to write B plus. I wouldn't go B plus. I would probably give it more of a C plus of a performance for JJ McCarthy. I mean, coming out with a win, using your legs, hitting some big shots down the field, like all that's fantastic. But there was a lot left out there. And that's what he was saying. That's not just me and my film study. He said that after the game. He said, hey, there's a lot more meat on the bone was the exact word that he said. He said he's got a lot to clean up. Some of the throws on the run, some of the inaccurate passes. So it's a great baseline when you can win 2 games where you don't feel like he was the sharpest. So now stack weeks together and get this guy on a roll to where you play a game on Sunday, you break it down on Monday, you get back and put in the game plan on Wednesday, you get to practice. Like, these are things that the 2025 Vikings haven't had. They haven't had it with anybody, where it's just, as O'Connell has said, Sunday to Sunday, but it's so disruptive, the stuff that they've had with the travel and the Thursday night and the Monday night and all that stuff. It is what you get when you have a lot of hype, but it hasn't been the easiest for him. And then the injury as well. So now I think he's got a real opportunity to go Sunday to Sunday and start to get in a rhythm and get better when it comes to some of the basic stuff that he made mistakes on. Let's see. Zoomer KO, Lions 36%, Packers 34%, and Vikings 30%. Okay, fair enough. I mean, I would include the Bears, though. You can't totally say the Bears are out of it. They're still in that conversation. First name, last name, Vikings are back in control of their own destiny. I think that's true, yeah, because they play a lot of division games still left to go. 4 division games out of their final 9 really does put it a lot in their hands, but they can't have bad losses. You know, they can't lose to New York late in the season. They've got to probably beat Dallas. Like, I think if you split the final 4 games in the division and end up 4-2 in the division for the year, it gives you a great chance to make the playoffs, but you've still got to win some of these. Washington now is a beyond winnable game. Like, Washington's one of the worst teams in the NFL now that Jaden Daniels is out. So there are some suddenly very, very winnable games that are on the schedule. And, you know, I think that percentage chance should go up. I don't think to a coin flip yet, because they're still in last place, but it goes up to, how about we say like 40%, somewhere in that ballpark to me, that they could make the playoffs. That was the FanDuel question of the day. There's still plus 390 on FanDuel to make the playoffs, but how much did your percentage go up? First name, last name says, for the FanDuel question, I have no idea how likely the playoffs are for this team, but I'm feeling a lot better about how exciting the rest of the year will be to watch either way. So the biggest thing for me is that the health. O'Connell mentioned this when he was asked about the trade deadline, is he basically said, it feels like we traded for a bunch of players just to get guys back. And if other teams are getting more hurt as you're getting more healthy, sometimes it just times out that way. And their playoff odds could be higher than other teams just based on the fact that they are healthy now. Hunter says, what do we do now with our expectations for this team? Are we back to expecting this team to make the playoffs or finish above 500? Or is that an overreaction? I would say that it is not an overreaction to say that this team should, the rest of the way, be very competitive in the race, in the NFC. Now, sometimes when you put yourself behind playing a backup quarterback with a bunch of injuries, it just doesn't get there. How about like the 2002 Detroit Lions that went 9-8 and they fought like crazy? They were 1-6. They fought like crazy. And at the end of the season, they didn't make the playoffs because of tiebreakers. But man, did you feel good about where that team was going, right? So the Vikings might be that, and they might not make the playoffs because of that start. But I think that the expectation now should be to get to a point where you end the season and we're not talking like we did last week. Like, we're not having this like existential crisis of what is this franchise even supposed to do with itself? Yesterday, you saw all the things that they thought they were getting. Hargrave was great. Allen was great. Hey, look, Blake Cashman, Harrison Smith, Andrew Van Ginkel, they're a really big deal. Really, really big deal on this team. Like, yeah, that's it. That's what's supposed to happen. That's what it's supposed to look like. So you want a lot more of that as you go to the end of the season. And if you only win 9 and you end up missing the playoffs because of tiebreakers, well, that's a heck of a comeback from where you were at one point, which can't be completely excused, but certainly can be explained from the injuries and the quarterback play that they had. At very least now, they have some winning quarterback play with the ability to scramble, make some big time throws, things like that. Jay says, FanDuel question, currently in 10th in the playoff race. We have to have a lot of teams lose. I think we could finish 10-7. 10-7 might be enough, but that's my whole point. If you find a way to 10-7 from where they were, which was hellacious, I would even say 9-8, then you've done a really good job. I think you've done a really, really, really good job to get there, considering how low it was. But I'm also going to have to ask Manny Hill and Brian Murphy what they think of that as well. They will join very shortly as soon as I see Murph pop up in my little screen. There he is. There's Murph. So let me get to those guys. We'll continue to answer and respond to your questions and make sure you're answering that FanDuel question of the day. So give me 1 second here and we will get Brian Murphy and Manny Hill in. And this is a great night to be here listening to us because not so much of an enjoyable Monday Night Football contest. There's been a lot of games where I felt like, man, I want to watch the game and, on the other screen where my eyes are bouncing back and forth. Today is not one of them. Jacoby Brissett playing. Manny, how about that question? We'll start with you. We'll get Murph in here in just a second. Start with you on this. The question about expectations. How much can one game and one result for you change the expectations for the 2025 Minnesota Vikings?
I think depending on, and I think in this particular case, when you consider who the opponent was that you beat yesterday, I think that can change things a lot. Especially when you also consider how things kind of changed following the previous game against the Chargers, where that was a team that was kind of banged up on the offensive side, yet Justin Herbert still torched you on defense, and it was basically a no-show on offense. And obviously we know Carson Wentz wasn't anything close to being 100%. So, I mean, that really kind of screwed things up for you from the start. But when you look at the opponent that you beat yesterday, the way it looked, the way that you responded offensively when Detroit goes right down the field and scores a 40-yard touchdown on 4th and 4 to Sam Laporta, one of the best tight ends in the league. And I know when I saw that play, I was like, oh, this is going to be one of those games. This is going to be 38-10, 38-13, something like that, and McCarthy's going to struggle. But they took the ball, went right down the field and scored and responded and tied the game, and then eventually took the lead and never relinquished the lead at that point. So, I think it changes my perspective quite a bit on, I think, what we now believe this team is capable of. The biggest thing too is, and you've been talking about it, they got healthy, man, on defense. They got so many key guys back. Andrew Van Ginkel is just such a beast, and getting him back in that defense. We talked about how when you bring guys back, the domino effect that can have on everybody else on the field defensively. When getting Andrew Van Ginkel back in there, it lessens the workload for Dallas Turner, where you're not asking him to do as much as they had been the last couple of weeks. The impact that having Blake Cashman back in that lineup has, what it does, puts Eric Wilson now in a slot where he can really thrive, and Eric Wilson doesn't have to worry about picking up the slack from when Cashman was out. So getting the defense back and healthy, and seeing what they were able to do on offense with the young, talented quarterback, I think changes my perspective a lot on what this team can now do going forward, especially when you factor in some of the things you talked about Washington. That what happened with Jaden Daniels, that's going to change how that game, when I pick the schedule, that's going to change now how I pick that game, although I think I've been giving the Vikings a win there. But yeah, I mean, I think seeing what they did yesterday shows what they're capable of at full strength. And I think it leaves a lot of room now for optimism going forward.
How about you, Murph? How much did one game yesterday change your feeling on where we should set the bar? Okay, I can't hear you, Murph. Maybe pop out and pop back in. See if we can get that set up there. But I agree with you, Manny, that just the way that it happened mattered so much to the conversation, because it's not just, oh, you won against Detroit. If they had won on, I don't know, 2 interceptions that bounced off people's helmets and fluttered up in the air and they were returned for touchdowns or something, I think we would have said, man, that's just random and, whatever. But in this case, we're talking about outplaying a team pretty significantly. And there's a metric that people use about like success rate and just did you actually outplay your opponent? And they clearly did in that game. Now, it wasn't perfect and it was pretty ugly, but if you can on a play to play basis cause that many problems for Jared Goff, on a play to play basis cause that many problems for their defense that had been very good so far this season, that's a good looking football team. And if they had been this team, this roster all year, and then they got a random win, I'd be like, 500 team, that's what they do. They haven't been this roster. There's been half of this roster that has been in. Do we have you now, Murph?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Are we there?
Yep.
All right.
Yep. We got you. All right. Fire away.
For the troubleshoot. Yeah.
Fire away.
It's 180 degrees different than how I felt about him 48 hours ago. I mean, just the aesthetics of that game yesterday and McCarthy's success. I mean, just a total air freshener. I mean, just a blast of oxygen. Like that first 70-degree day in March, kind of, like it just makes you feel better. But let's put McCarthy aside. The complimentary football that they played yesterday was unlike anything we've seen so far this season. Yes, the roster depletion had a lot to do with that. I just was so impressed with the resilience because, to get trucked down the field like they did and have Laporta literally drag 4 defenders across the goal line is kind of a recipe for disaster before McCarthy even gets to take a snap for his yet next turn at redemption. So for the way that they turned that game around and the way they attacked, they made special teams plays. I mean, if they could just avoid holding, they'd have a great return unit. They made the splash plays we were used to seeing. They threw an elite quarterback totally off of this game. They eliminated a running attack. The Gibbs-Montgomery tandem had been tearing them apart for a while. They ended a 5-game losing streak to a division nemesis on the road. And so it's just the manner in which they took care of business. But because of the way they took care of business and checked every box, if we'd have sat down Sunday morning and say, what are the half dozen things they're going to have to do today to win? The Vikings checked them all and probably added a few more things that they really didn't even need or we wouldn't have thought of. I mean, they won the turnover battle. The only thing they did was fall behind. Beyond that, they won the turnover battle. They protected their quarterback. They made key plays, key third downs. They, again, threw off an elite offense at home, caused a ton of disruptions and pre-snap penalties and just a lot of chaos. And that's not something you expect to see from a Dan Campbell, Jared Goff-led team, especially when you thought it was literally going to be the 5th quarter from Week 18 last year, the way that opening drive looked. So, yes, I think it's a 180-degree turn. Means nothing, though, unless they take care of business at home these next 2 weeks, because I think that positions them for an opportunity to kind of go barely above 500, get 10 wins. And the schedule that we thought was so daunting early on seems to be softening by the week because of their opponents coming up. And, it is a snapshot of what we thought they could be. So maybe now is where the true scrutiny comes.
That's a great point about the schedule. And one of my yearly irritations is when everyone ranks teams by strength of schedule. You're like, you have no idea. You're trying to figure out week 13, like this,
in May.
Right. Exactly. And look, we pick the schedule and stuff, and it's a great way to track our
beast.
It's a great way to track our expectations and feelings and also analyze the other teams they're going to play. So that's kind of the key to that bit. But when people claim it's like analytics, that's where I get annoyed because it's totally disingenuous and analytics when you're like, here's their strength of schedule once it comes out. Like, what? I mean, Jaden Daniels not even going to play, and that team we thought was going to compete for a Super Bowl, they're horrible, as happens every year with certain teams. So I want you guys to answer that FanDuel question of the day, and then I want to talk about your evaluations of McCarthy, and we'll get back to answering fan questions here because a lot of really good stuff in the chat. So the FanDuel question of the day was, now the Vikings, they're not favored to make the playoffs on FanDuel. They're plus 390, Manny, but that's a big jump from where they were last week. How much did your number for the Vikings to make the playoffs, your percentage chance that you would give them, how much did it go up?
Well, after the Chargers game, I thought, I had it at about 10 to 15% that they were going to make the playoffs just because of, all the injuries they were dealing with. Carson Wentz just being a mess at that point, just physically, the performance and all of that, the way the defense was looking. I thought this was going to be, I thought they were staring at 6-11. Honestly, I'll be totally honest with you. I thought 6-11. I think I had them.
I think you gave them 8. I think that you were a little more on the optimistic
like 7 or
side.
8
Yeah.
The last time I picked the schedule. But I it's to Murph's point, it's like a completely 180. So I got to go if I'm thinking 10 to 15% a week ago, I think I'll go up to about 30% now because of the way the schedule is playing out. Now, again, they're still 4-4, and to Murph's point, these next couple of games against Baltimore and Chicago are really gonna, you can go one way or the other here. If you go 0-2, then we're kind of right back to where we were after the Chargers game. But if you win those 2 games because they're at home and you're 6-4, and now you're kind of getting ready to go through a couple of tough games at Green Bay, at Seattle. If you have those 2 wins in your pocket now, I think that puts you in a much better position into where if you find a way to split one of those 2 games, you're still sitting at 7-5 and still in pretty good shape. So I'll go. The next couple of weeks are really going to determine a lot, I think. But I think right now, after yesterday, I'll bump it up to about 30%.
Where are you at, Murph?
I was probably clinging to 10% last week after the Chargers game, only because I still didn't feel like I had a real assessment of JJ McCarthy. And even after yesterday, we don't have the complete picture, but it's coming into shape. You can see sort of the outlines. You can kind of see what he can do. It finally gives you with a complementary roster. So I'm pretty optimistic. I'll go up to 40%. Manny's right though. These next 2 weeks to me are critical because if you come out of it 6-4, and there's no reason to think you shouldn't. I mean, the Bears are doing okay, but they needed a miracle yesterday. You're still at home. Caleb Williams has had problems. I think he may have more problems at US Bank Stadium. Wild card seems to be a little bit. The Ravens seem to be getting better. Obviously Lamar's back, but they're still vulnerable. So I just look at that and I think, boy, you come out of that 6-4. I don't think it's that difficult to go 4-3. I don't think it's that difficult to get 4 wins on that remaining schedule and end up with 10. But I do think if they split and don't look very good doing it, and certainly, it's going to be problematic. 0-2, it's over. Now we got to see. We saw how McCarthy kind of sort of handled success because he had the fourth quarter in Chicago, but then he was on domestic duty with the birth of his child, didn't really practice. And then that bubble burst quickly at home against Atlanta. So that's something to keep an eye on too, is that he needs, it'd be great if he could win a game at home. I just feel like it really behooves the Vikings to use these 2 games as like the reboot to their season, because I think this is where the real scrutiny comes now. It's just, this is the team we thought they were going to be, and they're even at 4-4. So what are you going to do over your final 9? And I think that's the true measure of what the 2025 Vikings are going to be.
It's funny. Chicago doesn't seem that different to me from last year, except for last year they gave up Hail Marys and forgot to call timeouts and stuff at the end of the game. This year they've blocked an extra point, had Jaden Daniels fumble, and then had whatever that was in Cincinnati yesterday. 3 Cincinnati players being like, "You gonna tackle?" No one tackled. No one tackled Colson Loveland. So let me circle back to, as you mentioned, JJ McCarthy and the assessment. I just got done watching every throw and watching JT O'Sullivan's QB School, which I highly, highly recommend. Former Minnesota Viking, former about 12 different teams in the NFL, World League. Nobody knows more football than him. And his breakdown is extremely fair and really, really detailed on McCarthy. I gave McCarthy, Manny, a C+. And that's, I think, factoring for some of the plays that we forget, some yards that are left out there, an interception that's negated. That's a really bad process throw, but just kind of got away with. The sacks were somewhat concerning. I've never seen someone just do a straight up somersault before, like, to be young again, where nothing hurts. But obviously, every trait. It's like a C+ with some sort of glow around it, because every trait that you're sold on for him as a first round pick, running ability, which you and I obsessed over for maybe 5 or 6 years of our lives with the quarterback, the arm strength, the velocity on that football where you go, ooh, that one was cooking. And the leadership, the resiliency. I thought once again he showed all of that. But how would you evaluate or grade JJ McCarthy?
Yeah, I think a C or C plus, I think is about what I would give him as well. I mean, I think the most impressive thing I think he did for me that I saw was took the opening possession for them, for the Vikings, and went down and tied the game. That to me, I think said a lot because we've talked about almost ad nauseum with this team is you fall behind and you're in trouble. You fall behind early and you're in trouble because this defense is not built to play from behind. And you have a young quarterback that, is inexperienced, and how's he going to handle, falling behind by 2 or 3 scores, and is he going to be able to throw you back into a game? That was a big question mark. I think to take that opening possession after you fall down 7-0 and to march right down the field, make some throws. Obviously, the running, Aaron Jones getting off to a good start running the ball was big on that drive too. But to get down and score a touchdown right away to respond, because now you're basically back at square one, and it's almost like Detroit didn't even score that opening touchdown. I thought that was big because that allowed him, I think, to really kind of stay within the game, not go into a huge panic mode. I think it allowed the entire team to kind of settle around him as well. But so
Yeah,
that
three
was a
and out
good
would have
thing.
been fatal.
Oh my gosh, that would have been like the game's over essentially. If Detroit goes down and scores, you're down 7-0, and then you come out and go 3 and out and punt, it's over. That game is a completely different result in my mind. So I think getting that was good. Some of the nitpicky stuff, I don't even know if it's nitpicky. It's because it was kind of glaring. There were some missed throws, inaccurate throws. You talked about the interception that was negated. The interception that counted was also a really, really bad throw, throwing it behind Jalen Nailor like that. He had another one where he was kind of scrambling outside and he kind of threw it behind Jalen Nailor, threw it behind and kind of high to Jalen Nailor. There was the one where he scrambled and he had Jefferson wide open on the sideline and sailed it 5 yards over his head. Those kind of things need to be cleaned up. And, but that's now what we're going to be looking for over the next several weeks now is, those throws. Is he able to clean some of those things up? So yeah, I mean, there was some good, there was some bad, and I think that just comes with having a young quarterback that you're trying to grow and develop.
But Murph, when we talk about the game yesterday in terms of like, yes, things to clean up, mistakes that were made, but also the flashes of what he can be and what he was supposed to be. Finally, we can speak about JJ McCarthy the way we're talking about all the other quarterbacks in the 2024 class. Now, I know Drake May has accelerated by the other quarterbacks, but at the same time, last year, it was this way with Drake May, where he took some bad hits and he held on to the ball too long and he had some inaccuracies, and you're sort of going, where's it going?
On a much worse Patriots team.
Yes. Yeah. And, but even Bo Nix on a good Denver team had a 62-yard game and had some games where he struggled with his accuracy and he averaged 5 yards per pass attempt and stuff like that and missed throws, but it's much more normal. Michael Penix, same thing, where at times Penix has sprayed the ball all over the place. He's not a fully complete picture quarterback yet, but you're seeing the high end type of stuff. And how the team responds to him, Murph, I think it's like I want to give C+, but with asterisks that say stuff like team responded to him awesome and really seemed to care. And also, KOC, we'll get into KOC, but I thought gave him tons of opportunities to make those plays. But give me your breakdown.
I think he was living mostly in the C to C+ range, or just as a C range most of the game. But the third down dagger and the conversion to Nailor, I think I want to push him up to a B-. And then as you were saying that, it kind of occurred to me too. Yeah, you look at the numbers; they weren't gaudy at all, and there were some, fan fingered kind of moments. But things that stood out to me is, as Manny said, the answer after Detroit's opening drive, which really could have shaken that whole sideline to the core, especially after we come to find out they were having a open up a vein kind of meeting in the team hotel to kind of lay it all on the table. We learned that post game, but that how devastating that really could have been. So answering that with a scoring strike, answering and responding when the Vikings get the fumble off Gibbs and they're in Lions territory, and that drive ends with him going, bootleg right, I guess. I mean, just he had space, but he had to take the corner. He had a safety closing in like a battering ram, and he still got the pylon. Very reminiscent, of course, to week 1 in Chicago. And look, Carson Wentz is not making that run. I don't know if Sam Darnold makes that run, and I'm pretty sure Kirk Cousins doesn't make that run. So I look at those kinds of plays, the Naylor completion, the touchdown strike with his legs, and also the answer after the Lions opening drive. How timely those plays were matter so much more than a 350-yard game would, because they kept the game either from spinning out of control early or allowed the Vikings to really seize control and take that 10-point lead and really just kind of silence Ford Field for the rest of the day. So the timely plays that he made, I'll give him a B-.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I mean about, like, it's a B-, but the good stuff was really good. And the bad stuff didn't devastate them, but it could have in several instances. And I think, though, what I'd really like to see, and we're just going to have to wait to see it, because every week we're going to evaluate and grade and break down every throw and that sort of thing. But if you take those things that were good, which I think will travel, arm strength travels, athleticism travels, moxie travels week to week to week to week in the NFL. If you get a little bit more consistent with, the touch on the football, the Naylor throw is exactly what he's been talking about. Throttle down the you can almost see him like, okay, do not whip this football. Like, it's almost talking to himself. Like, just do not throw this 100 miles an hour. And he drops it right in. And there were a couple other throws where he did that too. But then there's 5 where he goes, nope, I'm still JJ McCarthy that throws the ball 7,000 miles an hour. And the ball that was overruled as a catch for Jefferson, which still struggling to fully understand that the ball can't even sniff the grass if it's not, I don't know, pinned to your body and not moving at all. We've eliminated great catches, and that sucks, but it's a bad throw.
It's a lawyer's league now.
It is, but it's a bad throw. It's exactly the throw that he's been trying to improve on, where he needs to anticipate better. He needs to be technically better. There was something he did where sometimes instead of just staying straight up and then turning and throwing, like you see Darnold do all the time, his whole body will kind of drop and then pop back up, and it just causes inaccuracy. And that happened on that play. And I think that if he gets more consistent with the technical stuff, practicing every week, week after week after week, and builds on it, that's where you're talking about forming a complete quarterback. So that's why my grade is a asterisk. And at the bottom, if I'm the teacher, I write, love where you're going though. Like love where you're headed with all this.
Appreciate you showing your work.
Right. Exactly. Showing your traits. The conversation about the defense. Well, let's talk KOC first, then we'll get to the defense. With KOC, I think we know that he's not the type of guy that is going to suddenly struggle to connect with players, or whose optimism will be burned out and he's going to start doing crazy stuff in the locker room, like Mike Zimmer hacking up the stuffed animals or whatever. Like we just know that's not him, right?
Fat cats get slaughtered.
Yep. The fat cats get slaughtered. We know. And if you don't remember, Google it. We know that's not him. But I think what he really needed in this game was not just like you said, to turn it over to the captains and to try something a little bit different, let their message really resonate with the team. I thought that was a good play for them. But I also thought he needs to call a great game. And at the end, I think we can all agree that, yeah, you should just be running the ball. It just should be 3 handoffs. And if it goes nowhere, you're going to win the game because they won't have enough time left. And I will say, there are teams with their analytics person standing on the sideline to say to the coach, hey, you need to do this here. I don't know if he communicates enough with Ryan Cordell, who's in charge of that. There's no analytics person who would say, yeah, stop the clock twice. So I think maybe he needs to lean on his guy there in a situation like that. Because after the game, he didn't see, when Seifert asked him about it, he didn't seem to like process that he had given Detroit a chance to win the game by mismanaging the clock. But to me, those things, that is a forest through the trees. That is like, don't miss the bigger picture here. Guys were wide open. They used Jefferson brilliantly to draw attention elsewhere. They ran the football well. Aaron Jones was super involved. They blocked it up, and he gave McCarthy easy options for a lot of the game. Now, I thought in the second quarter, he got a little bit into, I think I will pass. And you know what? I will pass again. But I also think that some people have to get over it. Like, get over the fact that he's going to lean on the quarterback. Just get over it. Like, he's never going to run. And this is me too. I'm talking to myself. He's never going to run first, second, and third down over and over and over and over again. It's not going to happen. And in the biggest moments, whether it's goal line or third down to end the game, he's going to say, quarterback, win us the game. That's how it's always going to be. And you know what that's going to do is we're really going to find out what McCarthy's made of, because that's how it's going to be. I thought he called overall a flat out excellent game when they needed it the most. Did you see it that way, Mr. Hill?
Yeah. I mean, I think, like you said, the opportunities were there. The receivers were open. There were throws that, honestly, if a good veteran quarterback were playing in that game instead of JJ McCarthy, and this is not a slander of JJ McCarthy. He is who he is right now, a 22-year-old who has not played a lot of games in the NFL. But I think a veteran quarterback who's been in the league for a decade, who's really good, would have gone out and executed a lot of those throws. I think if, honestly, and this is crazy coming from me because I've been the biggest critic of Kirk Cousins for, the last 6-7 years. But I think if Kirk Cousins were quarterbacking the game yesterday, the scrambling plays that McCarthy made wouldn't have happened with Kirk. But I think some of the throws that McCarthy missed in the game yesterday, I think Kirk would have nailed those passes. Just because he's a veteran guy that's played in the league for a long time and has been very productive. And I think that's because Kevin O'Connell really called a good game and dialed up the right plays in the right situations. And I think in the case of McCarthy, it's just, the little things that need to be cleaned up. The more experience he gets, the more practice he gets, all of that stuff is really, the play calling of O'Connell and the development of McCarthy, I think is going to come together really well eventually over time. And I think it's going to be good. And I think that's a really good sign now for where this team is headed overall, that they have a head coach who has a clear vision of what they want to do on offense. And it's just going to take a little bit more time, I think, for the quarterback to really kind of mesh and continue to fit in with that.
What did you think of the coaching, Murph?
Oh, I thought it was fantastic. I think it might have been one of his best coaching jobs in Minnesota. I mean, it's hard for me to cheer. He's 0-2 in the playoffs. He lost that game to Detroit last week at the end of the season. So it's hard for me to cherry pick all the great regular season games of, past, but where the team was mentally, physically, the scrutiny that was on him for the play calling, for managing Wentz's injury, for, getting a little bit defensive when asked for more daily updates on McCarthy. And it just, you could feel the walls closing in a little bit on him, and he hadn't really had to deal with it. I mean, he had the Cousins Achilles fiasco to deal with, which was almost more tragic than it was, crisis. And this felt like he could be losing the grip on not necessarily the locker room, but just on the season and where things really how badly it could get. As Manny said, he was looking at 6-11, and that really could have happened. So I think just overall for him to have empowered the team, even Monday, to say, look, I'm not going to deal with you much, but on Saturday, we're going to lay it all on the table. And I mean, maybe it was a way to bring in some more people to blame if things really went off rails yesterday, but I thought it was really a smart thing to do because it made sure everybody was invested in the locker room, and that there really was no turning back from where they were, and McCarthy needed to be supported as well as he could. So all of that being said, the play calling to me was impressive, especially on the opening drive. I mean, he might have been tempted to not stay with the run game, and the run game set up everything that happened on that opening touchdown drive, and really allowed McCarthy to probably calm down and feel good about himself, and let the offensive line feel good about itself. I mean, they were able to clear some lanes and make some things happen with that crowd roaring, and the Lions defense front ready to attack, and to be able to kind of push them around and set up some good pass plays. I never felt like McCarthy was in set up to fail at any particular moment. I think the things that happened were probably other breakdowns or just him misfiring, but I never felt like he was put in a terrible position other than the 7-0 deficit to start. So I think I think it was KOC's best week in terms of game planning and team management that he's had here.
The one that comes to mind for me that was very similar was San Francisco 2023. Now, I know where that season went because of the injury to Kirk Cousins, but that felt like a season on the brink as well, and looked like it could crash and burn if they don't get a win there. And then they obviously go to Green Bay. That's where Kirk gets hurt, but they get a win in that game. San Francisco was Super Bowl contender. They actually went to the Super Bowl that year, and they pulled out a tremendous game plan against the 49ers, got that big home run ball at the end of the half to Jordan Addison, great play call, that so forth. That felt like yesterday where the kitchen sink came out for Kevin O'Connell. The one thing I would say, and it might be a little bit of just a thought for rather than a criticism, but just a thought, is there will be times, and watch me use this Gen Z language, there will be times where JJ McCarthy is kind of crashing out in a game, where I felt a bit in the second quarter that it got a little chaotic, a little fast, a little bit. Well, he had that tip ball that looked like it was going to go to somebody else that lands in Hawkinson's hands. And then he's got, the crazy throw down the field that didn't make any sense that got negated. And there were a few sacks and there's the somersault. And you're like, okay, a lot's happening right now for JJ McCarthy. If you're going to have, say you're going to have 10 easy button plays on your play sheet, don't use them all in the first quarter. The screen, that gets them a first down on third down, the swing pass to Aaron Jones, have those in your pocket. And maybe he did and wasn't able to use them, but have those in your pocket for McCarthy to get a bucket. Because I feel like what's really important for a young quarterback is to sort of see the ball go through the hoop, get that easy completion, get a nice good gain on something where you didn't have to do a whole lot, a screen, a real quick pass or just something to get him going, a swing pass.
A layup.
Right, exactly. Get a layup. And I thought that as they went along, it was almost like he went, "Woo, my quarterback's playing really well. Let's dial it up." And then it was, okay, now you got to rein it back a little bit. But overall, an excellent game for O'Connell, and maybe even a better game for Brian Flores. One of the best performances we've seen from this defense in some ways. Not the tackling all the time, certainly not in the coverage all the time. And I think those weaknesses aren't going away unless they make a trade, which we'll get to, because that discussion is happening now with this week being the trade deadline. But just in terms of the defensive game plan, Manny, I not only saw so many things that made me go, oh yeah, Andrew Van Ginkel, everyone, but the usage of Eric Wilson was just sick. I mean, well done to flip that guy's role on his head and just be like, blitz. We're going to take advantage that Jahmyr Gibbs is a small guy. We're going to keep him in the backfield. You can't just send guys up the middle like it's Madden. You have to pair those with technique from the defensive tackles who were really on point, moving bodies and stuff to create lanes. I mean, it was art at times. I thought it was some of his best work as well. But how much, Manny, do we want to take what we saw there and say, well, they're elite now on defense? Can we go that far? Or are we also saying, because the Detroit guys were saying to me after the game, hey, we were concerned about this interior offensive line once upon a time with Frank Ragnow retiring. So how do you kind of weigh the different things that happened there?
Yeah, what you brought up about Eric Wilson, it kind of reminded me of when Mike Zimmer had a great game plan against the Saints for that
Yes.
playoff game in 2019, where he took Everson Griffin and Daniil Hunter and put them on the interior and let them rush up the middle, because that's how you beat Drew Brees, is you get right in his face, get guys right in his face. Yeah, I'm not ready to call this an elite unit yet, because of the issues that you laid out in the secondary, which has been kind of a thing. We know Isaiah Rodgers had that great game against Cincinnati, but it's been really up and down for him ever since. And that's one of your starting corners. Byron Murphy Jr. is a good player, but again, it's kind of up and down with him sometimes. So I'm not ready to call them elite yet, but it was nice. I will say it was nice to see, the two defensive tackles kind of do what you brought them here and paid them a lot of money to do, which is apply a lot of pressure up the middle, and disrupt things for guys like Jared Goff, who, when you do get pressure on him, for as great as Jared Goff is and for as fantastic as he's been the last few years with the Lions especially, you get some pressure on him, you can kind of rattle him a little bit and you can kind of throw him off platform, and it's not quite as easy for him. And he kind of turns into an ordinary quarterback at times if we're able to get pressure on him. So that part of it was good. And, sort of the specific scheming that Brian Flores did for a game like this and a matchup like this, I thought was really impressive. And it does kind of show, like, yeah, Brian Flores does know how to do this. He does know how to coordinate a defense. But at the same time, you still want to see better from your secondary. But I don't know, outside of a trade like you talked about, I don't know if that improvement in your secondary is really going to come, from within or come naturally. You're going to have to go out and get somebody to really kind of help bolster that part of the unit.
How good can they be, Murph? I mean, they've got some tough games coming up here. Going against Lamar Jackson, no easy task. And even Chicago's offense had open receivers on the first night of the season, was winning in that game. They've eventually will face Dallas. That's a really exciting offense. Like this, it's not going to be easy going to Green Bay, even though they lost Tucker Kraft. There's a lot that has to be proven here.
Oh, they got a lot to prove, no doubt. I mean, it really was their first time where they had the full complement and fully healthy too, to be able to, especially up front. I think, their softness in the secondary has been well documented. I don't know if it's going to be the death of them per se, but I think they get in vulnerable positions and they're susceptible to big plays. But on the flip side, they're prone to making the big play too. And I think not only were they able to get a lot of pressure on Goff and bring it from up the middle, which is usually not where it comes from, they really just took away their running game. And I thought, to be able to, the reason Gibbs was taking a pitch, I think, inside the 5 and eventually, which he bobbled. I don't think he ever got full control of the ball, ends up having it punched out by Hargrave. And it's funny that, if you see how the Vikings take advantage of that, they also found a way to, I think, really just kind of set the tone, because when they had been giving up so many chunk yardage running plays, it was really demoralizing, and you could sense the air being sucked out of them a bit. So to be able to assert themselves the way they were on the road and really just have that offensive line. Now, granted, Detroit's offensive line was vulnerable up the middle, so they attacked that vulnerability, which you should do. The fact that they were able to create so much havoc and pre-snap penalties and really just have them out of sorts after that opening drive, and hats off for adjusting quickly to that as well. They have an opportunity to make the splash play and keep, flipping the fields, making it a little easier on McCarthy. And really what benefited them so much, despite falling behind, was the fact that McCarthy's competent play and the fact that he was able to drive them right down the field and not turn a 3 and out and turn them back on the field, already tired, already trailing, already picked apart. It allowed them to play a little bit bigger the next time they took the field and puff out their chest. Hey, we're tied. The young kid answered. And that, again, is that complementary football, that psychological aspect of not feeling like it's on you to save the game, and we're going to have to do it in the fourth quarter. And we don't know if we have a quarterback that's going to be capable of throwing us back into the game, or even forging a comeback, or even just sustaining drives so we can catch our breath and maybe go hopefully steal the game. So let's see how the orchestra plays together the next couple of weeks. They've got the crowd, the 2 home games. I think they're poised to really to really prove if this was a one-off, or if this is something they can build upon.
Well, the reason I wouldn't think it's a one off is because I know the players and they just didn't have those players. I mean, with Blake Cashman, for example, last time out, his first game since being injured, and it's a very big difference that it makes to have him at 100%. And we saw the real Harrison Smith blitzing off the edge, knocking down a key pass. Like, oh, yeah, that's right. He hasn't been 100% really all season long. And now he looks explosive again. And you just can't say the name Van Ginkel enough times. But give Brian Flores credit, too, for putting out there. Jalen Redmond played defensive end. They played a lot of 3-4 stuff that you would have seen, I don't know, the Dom Capers Panthers or something using back in the day, or the Pittsburgh Steelers. They were using real 3-4 type of defenses that had gone away in favor of just straight up nickel around the NFL, where everyone was just playing nickel all the time. And they put a lot of big people on the field, which helped them stop Jahmyr Gibbs, stop that running game from being consistent. And then this defense, we know this. They are going to give up some big plays. They did it last year when they had a top-notch defense. They gave up some big plays, but where they get it back is in turnovers. And this year they have not done that. Sacks and turnovers have to be a part of this. And if they're not, you're just not going to be any good, or you're not going to be elite. They have to make plays like the 5 sacks they got of Jared Goff. I think he lost 44 yards to sacks. Like, that's a lot. And then, getting the strip there. Was that Gibbs or was it Montgomery? But either way, like popping it out from Montgomery. Yeah. It was Montgomery popping it out from his arm. Like, that's what they have to do. And when they do that, they're a very, very different team. I want to have a quick conversation about the trade deadline and then get you guys' take on some other things, bigger picture in the NFL, because what a day it was yesterday. Holy cow. I'm going to give the most boring take, so then you guys can't. So you guys have to make it a hotter take on the trade deadline. The boring take is this. Okay, clearly if there's something you can add in the secondary, you just have to do it because you're really short there. And you don't want Fabian Moreau or Dwight McGlothern to have to play the rest of the season at corner. You'd love to add something there. That's great. I don't think any of us want them to give up the farm in a year where you might not end up with getting in the playoffs, even if you play well the rest of the season. Even if you're above 500 the rest of the year, you might not get in. That's not the time to go selling out. So there's the boring take. Like, sure, I'd love a corner, and don't go selling the farm. Give me something different, Manning.
I'd say if you can go get an elite corner, do it. I mean, I think because we've seen in the past what, with other teams that have won championships, and I'm not saying Vikings are guaranteed to go to the Super Bowl if they trade for an elite corner, but we've seen the kind of impact that can have on a defense. And we know that the weak link in this defense is the secondary right now. And again, we talked about getting Andrew Van Ginkel back, the domino effect that had on everybody else, in that front seven. If you go get an elite corner, think about the domino effect that's going to have on somebody like Isaiah Rodgers, somebody like Byron Murphy Jr., who's a good player, but is he a number 1 corner? Probably not, but he's probably a really good number 2 corner. So I think if you can find a way to go get an elite corner, then you do it. The question is just going to be, how much is that going to cost? And is it going to be somebody that you're going to be able to keep as, part of this team long-term? Because if it's a rental, even if that guy's elite, given where you're at in the standings right now, I don't think it would make a lot of sense to do it. But if you can do it and it's a guy that can stick around here for a few more years, I say you got to pull the trigger on it.
That would be the big thing. Reek Woolen keeps coming up, but I think with Seattle playing like they're playing, I don't think that you can do that. If you're Seattle, that you can pluck a player who's been playing that much, even if he's been struggling at times, off of your team. Denzel Ward has been out there for a while, that idea, and Cleveland really should be selling. Give me something spicy, Murph.
Well, I don't think there's a lot of spice in the interior of the offensive line, is there? And center might be the blandest position on the field, but perhaps the most important. I have no idea what the center market is. I don't know what the center market is at this newfangled trade deadline that the NFL has tapped into. Yeah, elite corner help can win can win games with big plays and big moments. Reliable center play can help your developing quarterback and fortify an offensive line that just still seems to be teetering here. Now, they played well yesterday. There were still a couple of balls on the ground or a couple of things that happened I didn't understand. I don't know if that's because of the lack of chemistry with McCarthy and Juergens or Brandel or whatnot. But, you took a swing with Kelly, and clearly he's injury prone and suffering a concussion. I don't know what the risks are out there, but I think if you have a savvy, healthy, contributing, center, at least maybe even for better depth, if not to start. That's a little bit of black pepper on white rice compared to an elite corner, but that's the best I got.
Well, that's correct though, Murph, is that if a team is selling a center, it's hard to be a center though, because there's so many words and things in the playbook you have to
come
understand.
In mid-season.
Right. It's hard enough to come in as a tackle. And that, I think, is one of the more straightforward positions of you block that guy. But we saw, it wasn't so easy for Cam Robinson last year. But I think that the center position has at least been mildly stabilized by Brandel, and he played well against Detroit overall. They did a good job against their interior. So that one is, you just have to survive that until Ryan Kelly comes back, if Ryan Kelly comes back, which KOC did say today that he's starting some work on the side. I don't love that for him and his long-term outlook. I think that it would be smarter for him, but I'm not, I don't know all the details, and I'm not a doctor and all that stuff. And I'm hopeful that we don't have to talk about injuries a lot more, because that just is not my forte. But let's before we wrap up, just talk about what we saw yesterday. The Buffalo Bills handling the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, gosh, defense from a week-to-week basis, guys. I mean, you would have thought 2 weeks ago, you would have thought Buffalo's defense is a wreck. They're getting run over by Bijan Robinson, or 3 weeks ago, whenever that was. Wow, they can't stop much on that defensive side. And then these last couple of weeks, they've been fantastic. They pressured Mahomes like crazy. They did not let him get off all the short stuff. End of the game, they close it out, getting, the interception. Just fantastic work by the Buffalo Bills. They are not the favorite on FanDuel to win the Super Bowl. It is still Kansas City at plus 550, but the Bills at plus 650. Philadelphia made a trade today for Jalen Phillips. They're plus 750. The Lions still up there along with the Packers at the Rams at plus 900. The Packers have dropped to plus 1100 after losing Tucker Kraft. So give me this, Manny, and then Murph, like your one thing. And I know you have a tendency to be like, hey, my one thing is these three things. One thing, Manny. Give me one thing from yesterday that around the league was your big, I guess it's like that.
I'll give it my one thing. My one thing is the Cincinnati Bengals are a mess.
No, I disagree. They are super fun, and I'll never forget them. I love them. I want to watch every single Bengals game. It's the stupidest football. It's Maction. It's college football. I will never forget you, 2025. Joe Flacco looking like Vinny Testaverde out there. It's magic. It's pure magic. But where you're going with this, though, they're impacting real results around the league by being a complete joke.
Yeah, well, they are, and I bring it up though because of something that we've kind of talked about, with the Vikings over the last couple of weeks when it comes to like a young quarterback and is the offense going to do enough for the defense playing complementary football. The Bengals got two offensive players. You got your superstar wide receiver and your, I guess, starting running back, Chase Brown. basically just taking little subtle shots at the defense for not being able to get a stop late
Was
in the
it
game.
subtle?
So, that's a good point. It was not very subtle
No,
at
it
all.
wasn't.
But yeah, I mean that, and I think that in itself is just going to be interesting to see how things kind of play out the rest of the year. If this somehow, does Joe Flacco, does his play continue to sort of maybe galvanize this team and keep them in a lot of games and make those games entertaining, or does a superstar wide receiver throwing the defense under the bus completely throw things into the tank, and the next thing you know, they're 4-13 and there's no point? Because right now they're talking about Joe Burrow coming back in mid-December. I don't know if you'd even want to bring him back if they're 4-10. Like, why would you want to bring him back for the last 3 games of the season?
Right.
It would not make any sense. But from now until then, though, it's going to be fascinating to see how things kind of play out for them.
Okay, here's real quick before I get to Murph, because you threw me for a loop here. I was not ready, but let me look at their upcoming schedule. So here's my prediction about the Bengals. Oh, yes. Oh, my gosh. They have so many relevant games. They're playing a lot of – they're going to mess somebody up at some point. Somebody's season will be screwed up because
Joe Flacco's got a dagger or two left in him.
Yes.
Yeah.
He did it to Pittsburgh. He will strike again. This guy has –
They got the Ravens twice.
That's right.
The Ravens twice.
Yes, they're going to play after this. They have the Steelers again, and then the Patriots, the Ravens, the Bills, and the Ravens is their schedule. And at the end of the season, it's kind of a joke after that. But this next run of games could be the funniest 4-game stretch. Every game is 42-38. Every game is Flacco, and Flacco finishing the season after showing up mid-season with 4,000 yards is going to make me laugh so hard. Okay, Murph, how about you? Around the league, what was really popped for you yesterday?
Or what was how did you tee up Manny? You had a nice phrase. I wanted to piggyback off of it. So that's how it's going to be, or it was something.
Oh, yeah. That's something like that. Yeah. Oh, that's how it is. Yeah.
That's how it is. Yeah, that's how it is, Dan Quinn. I don't understand what he was thinking. I think he's got a lot of respect throughout the league. Why Jaden Daniels was in that game in garbage time last night and how he ended up suffering a really ugly-looking elbow injury that's going to sideline him for quite some time. He's already been battling a hamstring and a knee injury. Has there been a more, I don't want to say startling, but surprising kind of fall? Not so much Daniels, but an organization star. I mean, we thought before the season, Washington could be a Super Bowl contender. They were the sexy hot pick because they had defeated Detroit on the road in the playoffs, because Daniels was this up-and-coming star, and because Washington had been so starved for anything positive in the Dan Snyder era. So there was a sense that this was a team that was going to make a move. And now they're sitting at 3-6, and cornerback Marshawn Lattimore's out for the season. And now Quinn came out today and said, yeah, I blew it. I had our franchise quarterback on the field when I shouldn't, and now he's a wreck. So I kind of wonder, I don't feel like Quinn is on a hot seat per se, but to see somebody mismanaged like that, an asset mismanaged that much, it also makes you maybe appreciate, even though it was a little eye-rolling at times, how much swaddling the Vikings have done with J.J. McCarthy, both on his expectations and just about his whole ankle injury. So, maybe it was good that he didn't go out and play against L.A. or Philadelphia, because
it was.
I mean, that could have been a horrible situation.
Yes.
So I just look at what's going on in Washington and wonder, who's in charge and why is Daniels like getting murdered by his own team?
Yeah, I think with Daniels, this was one of those failure to launch seasons where he got hurt right away and then was not right, and then you never get in a rhythm. The big move that they made was Deebo Samuel. He's hurt a lot. He's older. Those are some of the offseason moves that we tend to absolutely love, and then they don't really have the impact that you think. They didn't have the greatest offseason where I expected them to add a bunch of talent, and they kind of didn't. Laramie Tunsil they traded for as their all-in move, but their defense was still pretty mediocre. But we also see, I mean, look, CJ Stroud was the hottest quarterback out there for a year and has never taken the next step. We've kind of seen that with a lot of quarterbacks
Kyler
where,
Murray.
yeah, right, where they have like a big season and we just have huge expectations, and then maybe reality sets in, or maybe injury strikes, and that's happened to Kyler Murray and it's happened to Daniels. I think if there's a major concern, it is that. Like that was a concern of coming out. Like this guy does have a slight frame, and if he's gonna throw himself around like a bowling pin, and then he's going to get knocked down sometimes. And it was in every scouting report. Like this guy will take every risk. He will run into people. He will take huge hits. And somebody called him like Wile E. Coyote. I think it was maybe Nate Tice. I mean, like that's how he is. And I think we saw some of that. And that's what
You
Dan
want to be
Quinn,
the road runner.
right. Yeah. That is what Dan Quinn kind of said, is like, yeah, we were trying to just run the ball, but he tried to make a play. And that's how he got hurt. Obviously, he's not blaming him. He's just saying, I didn't expect that. For me, though, I think that we've gotten to, let's see, an hour and 55 minutes into the live stream. We can now quietly bring this up. Wow, Sam Darnold.
That's what I was thinking too.
Wow. Sam Darnold is in the perfect system for Sam Darnold. He's got the receiver. He's got the maturity. He's got the arm. And it is really something to watch. Just
so good. He
watch
is so good right now.
The laser show of Sam Darnold. And look, that game, now that McCarthy is back in, that game in Seattle could have a lot to do with where the Vikings finish in their season. And, I'll tell you the truth. I was holding off some travel plans just to see how does this thing go, because Seattle's an expensive trip. Oh, I'm going now.
Can I go with you?
Well, let's see. How many podcasts for free do you have to do to make up for Seattle, Manny?
You need to go out Wednesday and sit down with Darnold.
Yeah, I'm sure and they know I love them, so I can make this joke. One of the 18 Star Tribune reporters who cover will probably make that trip. But no, I'm just kidding. But truly, with Sam Darnold, it's been amazing to see. And everybody knows that we had the greatest respect for Sam Darnold. Covering him last year could not have been more of a pro for this franchise, and deserves all the success that he's getting. I've heard from people who are covering him out there in Seattle. They love him. They love him in the locker room. His teammates love him. And, I think that at the time we get to that matchup, we could be saying both teams made the right call. Or we could be saying, well, Darnold's slipping, or we could be saying Darnold's running away from this. Like that all of a sudden is a storyline to watch as we build up to Vikings and Seahawks. But gentlemen, another wonderful night of football discussion. Every Monday night we do the roundtable here. Manny and I will pick the schedule again on Thursday. Excited about how much that changes. Manny was getting some cackling in the comments yesterday. Oh, is Manny going to be negative now? Like, what? Whoa, no, none of you guys in the comments were negative going into that game. That's for sure.
Right.
But anyway, so I look forward to that. Thank you guys. Thank you everybody for watching / listening, and for your participation in the comments as well. And we will talk to you all very soon. Should be a really, really fun week. Tyler Dunn's going to show up. Steve Palazzolo's going to show up. We're kind of rolling out the stops here for a big game, and we'll get somebody for Baltimore as well. So thanks, everybody, and we'll talk to you all very soon. Football.